And now it is official from the president-elect himself. Donald Trump has named RFK Jr. as his pick for Health and Human Services Secretary. In a post on social media, the president-elect wrote in part, quote, Mr. Kennedy will restore these agencies to the traditions of gold standard scientific research and beacons of transparency to end the chronic disease epidemic and to make America great and healthy again. Now, if confirmed, Kennedy would be in charge of the CDC, National Institutes of Health, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, and the FDA, with a budget of nearly $2 trillion annually. CBS News political reporter Olivia Rinaldi is in West Palm Beach, Florida. That's also where the president-elect is. So, Olivia, we have been talking a lot about how controversial some of these picks are and what many of them have in common, and certainly RFK Jr. falls into this bucket, is how much they have expressed publicly disdain for how these organizations that they are now being tapped to run have been run in the past. Talk to us about how significant it is that RFK Jr. is going to be nominated to this post.
Well, as you mentioned, the former president now making it official, and you can see some of those undertones of that distrust, even in his announcement, talking about the chronic disease epidemic and saying that HHS will play a big role in helping ensure that everyone will be protected from harmful chemicals, pollutants, pesticides, pharmaceutical products, and food additives. And really the central point of this that we were getting at earlier was that Trump is now appointing people to these crucial cabinet roles that are distrustful of the agencies themselves, including Matt Gaetz leading the Attorney General, leading the DOJ, including the DOD as well for Pete Hegseth. So all of this very interesting to see this happening time and time again with these picks that he's choosing.
And in his victory speech, Trump said he's going to help make America healthy again. He wants to do some things. We're going to let him get to it. Go have a good time, Bobby. So we knew that he was on the short list. What are some of those things that he wants to do? Do we know how RFK Jr. is expected to reform Health and Human Services?
Well, I think we can see just from some of this statement that Trump says handling the chronic disease epidemic. That's something RFK Jr. talked about very consistently on the campaign trail. That is his major focus, and removing food additives from, things like cereal. He was talking about, I believe it's called Red 40, which is a dye that gets added into food. That's something I could see RFK Jr. tackling. We also mentioned the fluoride in the water policy. That's something he brought up several weeks ago, saying that it should be removed because he believes it causes unintended health consequences for children and people who consume it. So notable there that he then ended up speaking to President Donald Trump about that, and Trump said he would be open to any of these policies that RFK is talking about implementing. So all of this very interesting that he's open to this wide range of policies. But on the chronic disease epidemic, it's something he's talked about for a very, very long time. So for this appointment to happen, subsequent Senate confirmation, all very notable of some significant changes that could be coming at Health and Human Services.
So you have interviewed RFK Jr., Olivia. You did it fairly recently after he endorsed President-elect Trump out on the campaign trail, because prior to that, he was running for the presidency himself. What did he have to tell you about his support for the president-elect?
Well, they've become very close in recent months. I'm struck by, the transformation of RFK Jr. and Trump's relationship over the course of this entire campaign. We know that RFK was running as a Democratic presidential candidate, subsequently dropped out, then ran as an independent, subsequently dropped out after that, and then endorsed the former president. And I'm remembering just from times on the campaign trail when we've been able to ask Trump questions. I asked him back in April when he was up in New York for his trial what he thought of RFK Jr. And he said he's a great guy and I've known him for a long time. Later on, Trump said, I know nothing about him and I don't know him. And now, of course, the two of them are close, and he'll be serving, if confirmed, as his Health and Human Services Secretary. So a typical Trump evolution there for RFK Jr. in his orbit. But they are close. They talk very often, and Trump is very open to hearing policies that he puts forth.
And Olivia, Tell our viewers a little bit about RFK Jr.'s qualifications, some of his controversial positions, and given those two things, his possibility or likelihood of actually receiving a Senate confirmation.
Well, with this nomination, it's putting a vaccine skeptic in the driver's seat of overseeing all vaccines and production in the country. That's really important to underscore there. With this appointment, he'll be leading or in charge of overseeing the Center for Disease Control, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. Part of the FDA has an advisory board that oversees, trials into vaccines and pharmaceuticals in the country. So to put someone who's deeply skeptical already of vaccines, of pharmaceutical companies overseeing those agencies, it's deeply important to understand what that could mean and the transformation that we could see for health guidelines in the country. These are also, in that position, you're also in charge of setting some health guidelines and meeting with doctors and advisory boards about what's best on certain items. And I mentioned this earlier, but I'm struck by what happened in 2020 during Trump's last administration with the pandemic, where Health and Human Services became such a key role in conjunction with the Centers for Disease Control and the FDA in approving and greenlighting the coronavirus vaccine as quickly as it was. If we were tasked with another pandemic, what would that look like in this country, and what would that vaccine look like? We also know RFK Jr. is deeply skeptical of the coronavirus vaccine, as well as several other vaccines that children are supposed to get in their young age. And this is coming as there's really been a wave across the country of that deep skepticism of the COVID vaccine, but also vaccines that children get for polio and other issues as well. We've seen some spikes in those across the country. So it's coming at a time that really speaks to a concern that people have. It's part of the reason why Trump put him in that role, is to speak to those concerns.
And he will be in charge of all of those issues, as well as reproductive health care, the Affordable Care Act, and other things that Health and Human Services oversees. Olivia Rinaldi, thank you.